On show 424, a new electric Porsche, Tesla's new Autopilot hardware, and Renault are the next with vehicle-to-grid. Well, those stories and many more on today's Sunday edition of the podcast, and of course your answers to this week's question of the week. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, in fact, wherever you're listening around the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. My name is Martyn Lee, and I've picked out the best stories today to save you time, and thank you to myev.com for helping make this show as always. If you've not checked them out yet and you're in the USA, then do check out the world's first marketplace, all about buying and selling EVs and learning about them along the way as well. If you don't follow them on their socials, you can do, and if you haven't dropped by the website yet, then it's 4 easy letters to remember, MYEV, dead easy, right? Elon tweets then, been keeping up to date with what Elon Musk is tweeting. He says that please note, prices on all Tesla inventory cars will rise worldwide by around 3% on April the 1st. And that's his tweet. Many people talk about how Tesla, how companies pull levers for demand and to stimulate people buying cars. I wonder if that is one case of this, where Tesla getting their CEO to tweet about prices going up, whether that is something that will indeed persuade more people to finally pull the trigger if they've been thinking about it, then finally buy the car. He also says, to be clear, this doesn't affect Tesla's website ordering prices. Existing inventory prices are currently lower than on the website, and this brings them in line. So there you go. If you're thinking of buying a Tesla and you've been looking, there's a used price increase on inventory. Not used price, an inventory price going up. In other words, cars they've made and are waiting for their forever home. Let's talk Nikola next. Nikola Motor Company and Saint Holdings announced the acquisition by Nikola of 400 acres of property at Pinal County, I think I would pronounce that, at Inland Port, Arizona in Coolidge. Now, Nikola plans to build its hydrogen electric Class 8 trucks at the manufacturing facility, and this location, it anticipates the project will be bringing 2,000 jobs to the region by 2024. Now, that is, of course, 5 years away by the time those jobs have arrived. And as many people, I had an email today, I won't go into it, but I was discussing with one of our listeners about hydrogen, because I think it has got a place, because all hydrogen really does is make electricity, which then powers all the other bits that you get inside an EV. So why not just drive an EV? Because all the hydrogen is doing is making electricity to then charge a battery to power a motor. And someone was chatting to me today on email, and I won't go into the details, but he was saying, yeah, like for buses and ships and maybe planes, that's all good. The thing about road transport, though, the costs at present are so high in order to build out an infrastructure network for people to go, right, well, that makes sense for me now, so I'm going to buy a hydrogen car. You think about all the times that we've talked about EVs, you've talked about it to friends and family, to work colleagues, to acquaintances, and one of the things that comes up so often with EVs is there's not enough places to charge. And that's a criticism levelled at electric cars when electricity, when you think about it, is pretty much ubiquitous. I mean, we've talked to people on the podcast before. Like from Plug-in Adventures. He was on the podcast a couple of Saturdays ago. Chris Ramsey did a Saturday special for us where we talked to him about his various EV-related adventures, including driving a Nissan Leaf in the Mongol Rally, going places where there are definitely no level 2 chargers, no rapid chargers on the side of the road. But guess what? They had electricity. And yes, he could plug in even on a normal, standard domestic plug, charge overnight and carry on with the rally. He drove the Mongol Rally in an EV, and people are saying, hydrogen's definitely the future. Yeah, we'll put some hydrogen filling stations around the place and then we'll all be charging on that. And that was kind of super interesting. So good luck to Nikola Motor, but of course building the car is one thing, building the infrastructure is another, and we'll see how they go. Let's move on to Porsche. Now, by the way, go back to Chris. If you search Plug-in Adventures, you can see what he's up to. I highly recommend it. Hugely inspirational guy as well, and fascinating to read and talk to. Maybe you'll get to meet him if you go along to some of the events that he does as well. Check out Plug-in Adventures. A plug for Plug-in Adventures, if you like. Let's talk about Porsche, clearly in no rush to launch a successor to its highly regarded 918 or the 918 Spider hypercar. As a plug-in hybrid, the 918 Spider broke new barriers for them, and it came at exactly the right time as Ferrari, McLaren, they were all launching their own hybrid hypercars. They were very careful not to say electric cars. They always use the word hybrid. The LaFerrari, the P1, were always described as hybrid cars, even though they relied on their batteries and the electric power so much, says Car Buzz. A few years have gone by since the 918 production ended, and now, or the 918, Porsche fans will know which way I meant to say it. So now it's time to start seriously talking about what's next. The Porsche CEO is Oliver Blume. He's been talking about this to Top Gear. He made it clear he's keen for Porsche's next hypercar to be all electric. A final decision hasn't yet been made. He said this, and I quote, "We have a big history here, and we'll have one in the future. It has to be the best in the market, the highest performing. Right now, we haven't got a concept for that car, but it might be a pure electric. Yes," he says. No, sorry, that was a question he was posing. But might it be full electric? ? Yes. In other words, it will be. And it's interesting because a Porsche has to be the best in class. And we know the Tesla Roadster is coming out, and they want to be best in class. In fact, they want to be the best car as a halo effect on all EVs. Now, only one car can claim best in class, although actually all of the hypercar manufacturers will. One of them will claim this stat, one of them will claim that stat, one of them will go, "Oh, well, we went around the Nordschleife for 0.2 seconds quicker," and so, you know what, don't get me started on hypercar fans of a particular brand arguing which one's quicker. But it'll be interesting, right? Because if you're going to go into that market where Tesla sits with the Roadster in a couple of years, you know you've got to make an amazing car. And hey, good luck to Porsche. If anyone can, they can. Let's talk about Tesla then. Begun producing the new Model X and the Model X vehicles with the very latest Autopilot hardware to support full self-driving capabilities. It's dubbed Hardware 3 or HW3. And it's their next iteration of semi-autonomous driving that includes navigate on autopilot, advanced summon, auto lane change, auto park, the ability to respond to traffic lights, says Teslarati in an article today. Looking at the source code, which you can do behind Tesla's new inventory site, there's some that have been posted on there, recently produced as well. Very recently produced S's and X's with autopilot, and they have been given a code APH4. That signifies those vehicles have the latest full self-driving hardware, as in the chips, the silicon that actually makes this thing work, the computer, the brains. Tesla uses the option code sequence APH. So, APH2, hardware 2, APH3 was actually hardware 2.5. Bear with me, APH4 now becomes hardware 3. Confused? Yeah, I am. Read Teslarati for more. I'll put a link in the show notes. Finally, before we get on to question of the week this week, it's time for a story about vehicle to grid from a manufacturer we've not mentioned really much about before. And Group Renault is beginning its first large-scale pilot schemes in alternating current vehicle to grid. So, you plug your EV in to your AC home electricity, and it can take energy from the battery and run your house maybe during the day or maybe at night. You've got some solar panels, for instance. It'll certainly be during the night, because during the day, those solar panels are making electricity for the house and maybe even charge the car. Look, it's a pilot scheme to begin with in the Netherlands and Portugal. Group Renault places the reversible charger. They put the charger inside the vehicle. All it requires then is a simple adaptation of the existing charging terminals, and that will enable V2G with the AC technology that Group Renault have on the Renault Zoe. I drive one myself, by the way, and it's AC charging. Up to now, CHAdeMO has been the only way in which vehicle-to-grid has worked, by the way. Of course, two-way charging is coming to the CCS standard soon, I think, if not already in the market somewhere. But I did a previous show, by the way, with Nuvei, a company who are they know everything about V2G. So if you're interested in that, by the way, I must go back and listen to that. Maybe even record a new interview with Mark Trahond, who spoke to us on the podcast last year, because so much changes so much. But if you go to my blog and type in Nuvei, you'll find it's fully searchable, and you'll find the old episode if you're interested. So a fleet of 15 Renault Zoes with vehicle-to-grid charging is going to be introduced in Europe over the course of this year to develop the offerings in reversible charging and lay the groundwork that they need to know. Pilot schemes begin today in the Netherlands, Islands in an ecosystem developed by We Drive Solar on the Porto Santo Island. That's in the archipelago of Madeira in Portugal as well. Following these pilot schemes, more's going to be introduced in France, Germany, Switzerland, Sweden and Denmark. And if they want to bring one to my house, I'll happily be a trial participant. Let's move on to question of the week this week. And we were asking you, this is a really interesting question, how you want to pay for charging when you're out of the house, and specifically rapid charging when you are out of the house. David Partington said this with our first email reply. I'd like to be billed the same way for rapid fast charging and slow charging. I don't see why rapid billing should be any different. For all these charging modes, I'd like to be able to choose a billing organisation and have them consolidate my charging on a weekly or monthly basis, as per my preference, and allow me to see where my money's being spent. I'd gladly pay a regular subscription for this, as I currently do for Polar in the UK, and I would expect all my charging data to be available online to view in near real time. There's a business model here for the EV charge billing companies who don't necessarily need to be involved in charging. Just a company that facilitates. They just become your bill operator. Short term, well, in the short term, it's contactless, he says. And that means I can either use my debit card or my phone with Android Pay, like 99% of my purchases on the high street. Thank you. That's David Partington. Colin Richardson. So I didn't put a space between those two answers in my show notes. Colin Richardson says short-term contactless. Colin uses his debit card on his phone, his Android Pay, like 99% of my purchases on the high street. He says long-term, there's a plug-and-play feature, like how Teslas work with superchargers. Colin Richardson says, just plug it in. Plug your car in. It knows who you are, knows your car, just get your bill. Right, I have put a space between these two listeners. And this is Raj. Raj Badwell says, in an ideal world, plug my car into any charger and get a bill at the end of the month. In the meantime, I would like credit, debit and contactless payments. I hate needing to set up an account for God knows how many chargers. Pete Glass is next, and he says, I'd like to see two methods on every charger. 1. Simplicity. Contactless payment card. Touch and go. No faffing with apps. Good word. Faffing. Second option, monthly account, where you pre-register with a payment method using your RFID card or a user interface like the app on your phone. You get a nice summary bill once a month to use for your budgeting or expense claims if you're putting them in at work. Pet hates, he says. Pet hates 1. Nightmare apps that crash. They have invisible tick boxes off the edge of the screen. You have to enter 16 digits of your payment card every single time. And number 2, apps that you have to preload money on. Yeah, I hate that. I've got one app for a charging network that I've still never used, but it's kind of in a place between all my usual chargers. So one day, if there is an absolute emergency and I can't charge at one and another one's got a big queue and it's about 20 minutes from my house, and I'm really just needing a real splash and dash to get home. If you know the UK, by the way, it's in a place called Ringwood, which is in the south of England, and they've got a charging network, and I don't know which one it is. Somebody would know listening in the UK. Genie Point? No. Maybe it's... Anyway, it's one of these ones where you have to get the app, register on the app, preload, I put 20 quid on or something, and then it just sits there. They've got my money now. And I've never used the charger, but I might do one day. I just didn't want to get to the charger and then be unable to charge. So I set it up, and I've actually not ever used it. So that's kind of interesting. Hello to David, who is in Brisbane, Australia. G'day, mate. From Brizzy, says David. For as long as I can remember, I bought some fuel with my credit card. This is not how Australians speak at all. This is how Australians sound in my head, because I've worked for 2 Australian bosses. And both of them spoke to me like that. I know the vast majority of Australians don't sound as crazy as I made them sound. Both of my bosses were. Moderately crazy, by the way. Love working for Aussies. I pay the vast majority of other bills with my card. I'd like to do the same for EV charging. Simple, quick, easy, and everything in one place, says David. I don't want a glove box full of RFID cards and charge tokens. Who do you think I am? A flaming galah? He says. Tom Raftery says, how would I like to be billed? I wouldn't. All right, in an ideal world, Tom, let's all charge for free. Seriously, I charge off solar panels, says Tom Raftery. When I drive down to Cadiz, I drop into the Nissan dealer. I charge there for free. It's fast, but if I did have to pay, the optimal way would be a charger, wherever it is, recognising my car when I plug it in, and the cost of the charge added to my home electricity bill. Mark Garnett says PodPoint's system is ideal. Now, PodPoint are a UK provider, maybe in Europe, but anyway, I know them from the UK. If you plug into a PodPoint, it starts charging, boom, immediately. Then you have 15 minutes to open the app in your car and claim your charge. You can, if you want, stay out of the weather. If it's blowing a hoolie and it's just nightmare weather, you can just... Ecotricity, says Mark, is the worst. It's got a multi-stage app. It asks the same questions again and again. It forgets my password, says Mark. Got a weak signal, an expired card, and he loses 15 minutes sometimes. Oh, I don't have that problem. They're okay. But yeah, I love PodPoint because I guess if you wanted... I don't know. I guess if you really wanted to be a cheapskate, you could plug in. Then after 15 minutes, if you haven't registered and claimed your charge and the charger cuts off, you could just unplug and plug in again and get... I mean, come on. Electricity's so cheap. We need to be supporting these charging providers. If that's you, I need to have a good look at yourself. I mean, it might not be possible, by the way. I'm thinking out loud. I've never done it myself because I've always just... When I use PodPoint, I just plug in, starts charging, claim my charge. Perfect. Hello, Alex. Alex Banahini says, with regards to this week's question, for me it has to be contactless. My Zoe's used for commuting, and I've only done a handful of long-range trips. Because of that, I don't want to be paying membership to a charging network, and the various apps and cards are a pain. The easiest public charge I had was a council-run coin-operated 22-kilowatt charger in a Blackpool car park. Physical cash in an EV charger. I didn't think it existed. If anyone has a picture of a coin-operated EV charger, please send it to me. I'd love to see that. Gonna have a mix of old and new. And my email is hello@evnewsdaily.com. Hello to Colin, who is the plug seeker on all his social accounts on UK social media. I think the important thing for charging is that it's accessible. Therefore, you can't rely on being a member of a charging network if you only use it on occasional visits of an area. Therefore, every charger should have access for debit and credit cards to be contactless, and you just tap your card and go. That being said, it's also reasonable to be able to join up to a subscription plan, maybe for a discounted rate, so you can also see all of your charges in one place. Hello to Kent from Denmark. In my opinion, we already have a good solution in front of us. In an ICE car, a combustion car, you see a filling station, you're able to see the price on a big sign outside it, you swipe your credit card, or you pay in cash. All the stations from all the companies are at your disposal all of the time. Maybe if Tesla made their network available to everybody, we could cover a much larger area with chargers, making huge incentives for more people to join the EV revolution. And finally, John Fruith says, I get free supercharging. And so this question does not apply to me. But if I had to pay for charging while on the road, I'd prefer something along the lines of PayPal to eliminate any other cards and tags, Apple Pay using contactless or NFC so that I could pay by waving my phone at the charger. Even better, have the chargers to be smart. So you just plug in and it bills you. Thank you, everybody, for joining in with this week's question of the week. And thank you to myev.com for setting a brand new question of the week. Here we go. Are you ready? Get your email ready to send me to hello@evnewsdaily.com. If EVs are going to cost more than combustion cars in the short term, what premium are you willing to pay? If EVs are going to cost more than ICE cars, at least in the short term, how much more of a premium are you willing to pay? If any. You can email me, hello@evnewsdaily.com, on Facebook and YouTube and the blog and myev.com. Leave your answer and we'll read out them next week. I never get a chance to do all of the answers, by the way, so I just try and find names that I know I haven't maybe done like last week. So if you sent one in and I didn't read it out, I have read it. And maybe I've replied to you personally, but maybe I don't get a chance to read out all of... We're over 20 minutes now on the podcast. Thank you very much to 207 patrons of the podcast for keeping me going. That would be you, Phil. Phil Roberts from Electric Future, EF.Energy, doing those big commercial solar installs here in the UK, our premium partner. Hello to Electric Motoring, that's Paul Hussey at electricmotoring.net, coming to the end of his current run of support on the podcast. I'll give you one final mention. Thank you so much if you're in the Chicago area. You've got to check out Paul. Done a previous Saturday special with him as well, back at the beginning of the year. If you're hiring a Tesla in the Chicago area, and I know for various reasons he's used the podcast to this show to raise a bit of awareness. He's doing some other things No, his personal business, I won't go into it, but electric motoring is continuing, and so please look him up if you're heading to Chicago. Electricmotoring.net, a top man. And to Brad Crosby as well, our third premium partner of the podcast. Thank you so much, Brad, for your continued support. I couldn't do it without you. David Allen, our partner, OEM Audio of New Zealand and evpower.co.nz. You can check them out if you're in New Zealand and you need those accessories. evpower.co.nz. Hello to Sasha Pallenberg as well, a source of inspiration for me, who I follow on Twitter, and Paul O'Connor, all partners of the show. Thank you so much. And all of our executive producers, like you, Alan Robson, Alex Banahini, Alexander Frank, who's got his own YouTube channel, who is Alex's Universe, Harold Gier-Skalsveen, Ashley Hill, Bjard Fuchstak, Barry Penniston, Bob Muir from GingerComputers.com in Dundee, Borislav Borisov, Brent Kingsford, Brian Thompson, Brian Weatherall, Brian Young, Cesar Trujillo, Chris Benson, Chris Hopkins, Craig Coles and Craig Rogers, Damien Davis, Darren Bird, Darren Sant, Dave Jewson, David Barkman, otherwise. Where am I to? David Finch, David Partington, David Prescott, Dirk Rotsatz and Don McAllister of ScreencastsOnline.com. Hello to Enrico, Stefan Schillo, Frederick Rovick, George Clargo, Jack Oakley, James Storr, Jason Fan, Jarrett, Jeff Urbies, Jerry Allison, Jill Smith, John Bailey, John Nodell, John Timmis and Juan Gonzalez. And that's the J's. On to the K's and Ken Morris and Kevin Mason, Lars Dallager, Lawrence D. Allen, Leger Gzil. Hello to Louis Hopkin, Luke Cully, Marcel Lohman, Marcel Ward, Martin Croft, Matt Piccioni. Hello to Matthew Ellis, Matthew Gruby, Maz Shah. Am I doing these ones again? No, that's fine. Hello to Mike Rogers. Hello to Mike Windsor, Nathan Gore Brown, Neil E. Roberts of Sussex EVs, Paul Seeger-Smith, Paul Stevenson, Pete Glass, Phil Mouchet, Philippe Calvet, Raj Badwell. Hello to Rajiv Narayan, Ralph Jensen, Renee Schneider, Rob Cooling, and his website is appledriving.co.uk. Rod James, Rupert Mitchell, Sarah McCann, Scott Callahan, Sakey Payne, Steve John, Stuart Hanna, The Limousine Line in Sydney, Walter McVeigh and Zach Hurst. It's a growing list. I'm not complaining. 423 previous episodes of the show to check out online. You can follow me on the socials by searching EV News Daily. Have a wonderful start of the week for Monday. I'll catch you tomorrow, and remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.